Hey guys, what's up? 7stop here. Welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be talking about how to actually start Ajatt, what the process looks like at the beginning, and so on. Wow, it is raining really hard out there. I find that most of the Ajatt videos, like update videos and stuff, they focus primarily on the results or from the perspective of someone looking back at the process from where they are now, which I think a lot of beginners, it just seems like they skip over those parts at the beginning where you're struggling a lot, you don't know anything, and they just talk about the results, which I think makes a lot of sense. Like right now, for example, it's when you get to a higher level in the language, it's hard to remember what it was like to be at a lower level, and you kind of forget about those times when you're just sitting there struggling to understand one expression or like feeling like you'd never be able to understand the language. I hear a lot of bad advice in the community, honestly, about like people will just say just immerse or just do it, which to some extent I do agree with and understand. But when you say that to someone who is like a beginner who doesn't really understand immersion and Ajatt yet, they don't really know what you're talking about. So first of all, I'll talk about what's probably one of my least favorite like topics in the community, which is tools and like what tools you need and what sites you use and all that kind of stuff. None of that really matters that much, but there are a few sites that you should definitely know about and be using. But there's like these people who are always talking about the latest tool, you need to download this, install this, use this plugin, or whatever, and like they're more focused on the idea of obtaining random tools and like how to download high quality like video files or something, rather than actually learning the language. Just like those people who debate grammar and like where to put your tongue in your mouth or something for hours. It's just fruitless. It's not going to get you anywhere. So I'm going to assume that most of you guys are into anime. I'm just going to provide like the main resources I used and use every day. So number one, we've got Onkey. Most people know Onkey. Onkey's important. You can do like a starter deck, Tango deck or something to learn basic words. I think that would be useful. It's not something I did, but I had already studied the language before, so I knew some words. If you're starting from zero, you would probably want to do that. And then people are like, what add-ons to use with Onkey? Honestly, I don't think it really matters, because like as long as you're using like all those people before these add-ons were a big thing, there's lots of Ajatters who learned with Onkey, obviously on the default settings. But there are things you can do to improve it. I'll put a file in the description with the add-ons that I have, but it doesn't really matter that much. But that being said, it's not like I recommend this as like the perfect Onkey setup, the ideal Onkey setup, the most advanced and detailed Onkey setup. No, it doesn't matter. Your Onkey setup doesn't really matter. It's all just a waste of time. I mean, there are things that will save you time, but it's a waste of time to sit here all day and be like, what's the best add-on? Where's the add-on I can install? And then you fiddle around with it for 6 hours because you can't figure out how it works. Just install Onkey and use it. The version of Onkey I've been using is old. Like I haven't updated Onkey since I've started, because I found a couple add-ons, I put them on there and it worked for me. Just find some couple add-ons that work for you. Don't stress out about it too much, because that's not going to have a huge effect on your learning. And then there's other tools like auto-generating cards, like a machine makes cards based on a subtitle file or something. I've never used any of that. If you want to use it, you can. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, I just never used it. I don't think it's necessary. If you can't figure out how it works, or you feel like you're wasting too much time on it, don't worry about it. That stuff's not important. I've always made my cards by hand, which apparently people don't think is good anymore. That's not very efficient, which I understand. So if you want to use something else, you can, but don't stress out about it. And obviously the most important thing you're going to need is your immersion material. So how do I get immersion material? Number one site, nya.si. You're going to need that site. You can download so much anime from there, and then you're going to need some player, because that downloads actual files, like raw files, not streaming. All the kids on their streaming softwares now, back in my day, we had to actually download the file, But you're going to need some to play those files, which you could use like VLC Media Player or that other one, MPV. I've never used it, but back in my day, we only had VLC Media Player, so I used that. but it doesn't matter. You just need to have a way to turn off the subtitles on the files you download. So on VLC Media Player, that's the V key, most important key. And then if the audio, if it has multiple audio tracks, the B key changes the audio tracks. You can also download lots of books and manga from Ya, or for that kind of stuff, there's like Discord servers like the Moe Way. You can download books from there. And then of course you can use streaming services too. Like I made a video about how to use the Soft Ether VPN with Netflix, and there's other streaming services like even Crunchyroll. You can turn off the subtitles and use that, whatever you want. Oh yeah, YouTube is a really important one. You can learn a lot from YouTube. So much stuff on YouTube, just endless content. That's a great resource.
今エベレストの頂上に来ています。標高8848メートル。ちょっと手を伸ばせば宇宙に届きそうな感じです。
And the internet in general, you can read articles and all that kind of stuff. And then the question will become, how do I consume that immersion? Like specific questions. People get into specifics on like how to do it, when you should pause and all that stuff. But basically, and how to mine sentences, that too. For me, I just mine things I found interesting and put them in a Google Doc. So beginners, I think they don't know what sentences to mine. How do I know when to write down a sentence, when to learn a word? Is this word important? And I wouldn't stress too much about that. Just look for short sentences. Obviously, we know the concept of I+1. Things you don't understand plus one thing things you do understand plus one thing you don't. So just find sentences that are short and have a word you can learn in them. The best cards are going to be the ones where you're learning one, but you can learn multiple words if you want. I mean, it's not really efficient. You can do it, but it'll be harder to remember. And then how often do you want to pause? If you're a beginner, it's all nonsense, right? Almost all of it. So you don't really need to worry about pausing that much. Just pause when you maybe you heard something and you feel like you almost got it and you want to go back, or like there's a sentence you want to mine. Obviously you can pause it and go back, but you shouldn't be pausing all the time. You shouldn't be mining every sentence. Just go through it as smoothly as possible while mining what you can. And you'll be like, oh, that sounds kind of vague. Don't worry about it. You'll get a rhythm for it. Just force yourself to sit there and immerse and not pause all the time, and you'll start getting a intuition for when you should and shouldn't mine a word, whether it's common or not, whether it's worth learning, those kind of things. For the sentences you mine from immersion, the card format, it doesn't matter really. It honestly doesn't matter. But I use the sentence. You don't have to use the sentence. Sentence cards aren't as popular these days, but I've used them. I think they're good. I think you can learn with word cards as well, or vocab cards, that's what they're called. But I use sentence cards because I like having a sentence to tie it to have some context. Don't read the whole sentence every time. Don't have audio. Read it the whole time. It just takes way too long. Onkey is not that important. Onkey is for learning words quickly and efficiently. So don't make yourself sit there for a long time reading Onkey cards. That's very bad. At first, it will feel like you're never going to make progress. Or, I think there's different kinds of people, or kinds of Ajatters when they start Ajatt. Some people at the beginning, they think they're understanding way more than they are. I don't know why this was me. Like, I thought I was understanding way more than I was, and I don't know why. I'm not sure how that works, but that happens to a lot of people. And then you'll have another stage where you're like, oh, I'm never going to make progress. This is impossible. This language is so vast. How will I ever be able to understand and speak this language? But it sounds like a cult, but you just have to trust the system, or trust the idea, trust that it's going to work. Believe in the Ajatt, founder Katsumoto. But you just have to push through it and keep going, and you will get there. You will get there as long as you do a significant amount of immersion every day. You will not fail. Oh yeah, and another point I didn't touch on is like how much immersion do I need to do? I think if you want to make good progress, you need to do at least like 2 to 3 hours. But I would just recommend doing as much as you can. If that's your goal and you want to get good at Japanese, then put all the time you can into it. And also, I really recommend passive listening. Passive listening is not popular with the kids these days, but it is really effective. It's great. It's just a fantastic way to keep yourself immersed all the time. I've always passively listened. I passively listen all the time. It's a great thing to do. I spent like many days only like literally listening to Japanese, like at least in one ear all day for many days. So I think it's effective, and I think people underplay the importance of passive listening. Every good Ajatter did passive listening. Passive listening is useful and helpful, but obviously active listening is most important. As for reading versus listening, I'm obviously on the listening side of this debate. I listen a lot. I think listening is important. Most books just bore me. There are interesting books. I've read some books that interest me, but most of them just weren't that engaging, honestly. So I just preferred listening. I listen a lot. Watch tons of content. But you can read if you want, but I think it depends on your goals. If your goal is to get good at listening and speaking, then you should listen, right? If your goal is to get good at reading, then you should read. I think it's pretty much as simple as that. If your goal is to get good at all of them, then you can do both. Half and half or something like that. People debate about what's the ideal ratio, but I don't know what it is, because I just focus on listening really, and that worked fine for me. Another thing is that I recommend subtitles for beginners, not all the time, but definitely some of the time when they're available. I would recommend using Japanese subtitles, and I think it will really increase your comprehension, or whatever other language that you're interested in, not if you're not learning Japanese. The subtitles will make the initial process more bearable. Also, like looking up a synopsis of the show or the movie in English beforehand, just so you have a general idea of what's going on. It's just not a big mess of stuff being thrown at you. I would recommend that as well. So that's pretty much all for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again. Thank you, guys.